Running a startup comes with a variety of challenges, particularly when you live and work in a country with a language and culture that's different to your own. Priscilla is the Canadian founder of the Barcelona-based startup Bida. It's a subscription-based app that gives you free drinks in different bars and restaurants throughout the city. It allows subscribers to explore Barcelona's hotspots and help venues attract new customers. In short, it's a great way to get a taste of what this vibrant city has to offer. Priscilla's story is about the rewards and challenges of entrepreneurship, but it is also the story of Barcelona and its thriving startup culture. The city is more than just blue skies, good food, and mesmerizing architecture. Over the last decade, it has steadily attracted innovators and has been developing an ecosystem of incubators, investors, and business schools to nurture a new generation of European businesses. I'm Yasmina Sakat, and you're listening to Not That Original, a podcast that brings you stories that may not be so different from your own. Priscilla, you're an entrepreneur. What led you down that path?
Wow. So I think it had a lot to do with my environment. So I always grew up around entrepreneurship. My parents were entrepreneurs. My dad, when I was just 3 years old, from Montreal, took us all the way down to Florida, Orlando, Florida, to basically start working at a hotel, which he ended up owning a few years later. So I kind of grew up in this hotel environment. Spent all my summers there as a kid, and I would see my parents work so hard, but at the same time just enjoy, reap the benefits of being entrepreneurs and being their own bosses. So, I grew up around them, but then also my extended family as well. I have so many cousins, aunts, and uncles who really, their whole lives they've been entrepreneurs, and just growing up around this, it's what I've become accustomed to. It's what I've learned to be the norm and what I love.
What's your earliest memory of wanting to start a business?
So I was in the fifth grade, and blow pops were the thing back then in Orlando. So these were these lollipops filled with gum, or sometimes there were Tootsie Pops, which were filled with these things called Tootsie Rolls, these little candies. They were all the craze in the fifth grade. And I remember going to Walmart with my mom and buying a huge bouquet of blow pops one day. And the next day at school, everyone wanted them. So I, started to sell them. Naturally, being the entrepreneur I am, I started to sell them at $1 a pop, which, I don't remember what the price of blow pops were that those days, or the massive bouquet that I bought, but it was quite a profit. So just already in the fifth grade, I had these entrepreneurial tendencies. Of course, that didn't last too long. My teachers told me I couldn't continue to do that, so I had to stop at some point.
What do you like about running your own business?
So I think for me, the number one thing is the stimulation. So I've worked for, other companies inevitably throughout my career. And the thing that I felt I was lacking most was being super stimulated. It's super important to me. And running your own business, I feel like I'm constantly just all over the place. As a CEO, I hate that title, but as a CEO, I'm doing anything from marketing and sales to raising financing to dealing with IP issues, to taking out the garbage some days. You kind of have to do what you have to do. And because I'm touching so many different areas of the business, I'm not always, really familiar with, I have to learn along the way. So, luckily we have the internet these days and it makes things a lot easier, but also tapping into my network, just trying to research and learn as much as I possibly can about these different areas is super stimulating. And of course, you just learn along the way as well.
Startups are inherently risky. How much of that risk drives you and how much of it scares you?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's definitely a fine line. So I think I kind of thrive off of that fear as well. When something negative happens, I can really look at it and be like, this makes me even stronger. And, I'm even more driven than before to make this happen. And I'm going to show them, So, yeah, I think they go hand in hand. I think that fear, that risk, it really can fuel an entrepreneur. At the same time, it creates lows as well. You have really rough days, but it's all part of entrepreneurship. You have to be able to deal with it and really thrive off of it.
Have you ever had any moments when you wanted to throw in the towel? What made you persevere?
Oh yeah. So not too many times with Bida. In the past, I've started other types of ventures, and yeah, there are moments where you realize that you have to move on. With Bida, I've had I can think of two distinct times where it was just really overwhelming. I was going through a lot, and maybe didn't have the support that I needed at that particular moment. But you have to find your way back out, and I think that's what really separates entrepreneurs who are made for this and those who aren't. So when I've caught myself in those moments where I was really down and waking up in the morning to do what I normally loved was all of a sudden really dreadful, I had to find a way out of it. So for me, reading is really important. So I'll try to find books or articles that can inspire me or get my motivation back up. Speaking with people, with friends, with family, with other entrepreneurs. Really proactively reaching out to be able to share what's going on with yourself, which is not always easy, right? Not everyone understands what you're going through, but trying to find that right person at that right moment who can possibly help you get back out. And then part of it is just, looking inside yourself and realizing the bigger picture of why you did all this and getting out of that slump. It's all temporary, right? Like tomorrow is always a better day. So I think that's what I try to focus on is like, this is whatever I'm going through at that moment. It's something temporary and it can only get better,
What qualities are necessary to become a successful entrepreneur in your view?
So I definitely think perseverance. Like I was saying before, when you're in the slump, you have to be able to look inside you and think about why you did this and be able to bring yourself back out of it. Not everyone has a strong support network, and if you cannot persevere, if you don't have resilience, so that's another trait, it would be really, really hard, I think, to be a successful entrepreneur. There are times where I just feel totally, beat down, like nothing is going right. And you have to be able to keep going at those moments. You can't, throw in the towel and give up. That's the really easy thing to do, but it's not going to get you anywhere, really. I haven't met any entrepreneur who told me, hey, it was super easy. Yeah, I got where I am now. It was a breeze, and, there were no struggles along the way. Everyone I know who has made it, tells me dreadful stories about things that happened to them and times they almost gave up, but they were able to get through those moments. So I think that's really important.
So resilience is a key factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
You completed your MBA in Barcelona and then moved back to Montreal. How did you end up back in Barcelona?
Good question. So I graduated from ESA in 2014. I went back to Canada with my now husband. It was my boyfriend at the time, and kind of dreaded it. I was there in the cold and remembering Barcelona and the good old days. And I feel such a strong affinity towards Europe. So being back in Montreal was quite tough for me. And after about 2 years, at that point it was my husband. My husband and I started speaking about other opportunities, potentially moving somewhere else. We were quite open in terms of where we would move. So we were looking into Vancouver, California, perhaps back to Barcelona. And I was basically applying for jobs, looking out for new opportunities. And one day I was laying in bed, getting ready to go to bed, to go to sleep. And I started reading TechCrunch on my phone, and I came across an article about a company in the US who had just started this drink a day subscription, and they had just raised quite a significant amount of funding. And I couldn't stop thinking about the concept. I thought it was so cool. So I, kept Googling, reading everything I could possibly find that night about this company. And then a few hours later, so probably 3 or 4 a.m., I woke my husband up, who was next to me, and basically told him I needed to go to Barcelona. So he kind of propped up in bed and he was like, "Is everything okay? We just got married last month, what's going on?" And, obviously I explained to him about the app. I thought it was really interesting and that I thought it would be perfect for Barcelona. But I had to go there. I had to go to Barcelona, be on the ground, speak to bar owners, restaurant owners, speak with startups, investors, really anyone in that area, and see if this idea would be feasible. So he totally understood, very supportive guy. My husband is. I love him to death. And basically I was on a plane 2 or 3 days later coming to Barcelona with a one-way ticket. And I was supposed to stay about 2 weeks, ended up being 2 months. And then somewhere in those 2 months, I called Dom and my husband, and we talked about moving here permanently to start Bida. So we moved out here a few months later in January.
At this point in time, you had already started a restaurant-related app, right?
Yeah, so during the MBA, so students have the opportunity to do either an internship during the summer for another company, or you can take part in this entrepreneurial experience during the summer. And, me being the entrepreneur I am, decided to go for the entrepreneurial experience. So I came up with this concept called Crowd Eats, and it was a way to get groups of people into restaurants who had extra capacity and wanted to get more people through their doors. And we kind of, I say we, but it's really I. This is a habit of entrepreneurs too. You make everything seem bigger than it is. During the time, I really saw that organizing a group outing was such a pain. And I think this is still a pain today, by the way, if anyone wants to take this idea. So if it's your birthday, and you want to have 20 people go to a restaurant, you want to plan a dinner for, a week or two from now, what we normally do, you call up, a few of your favorite restaurants that you've been to, see if they have space. If they don't have space, you maybe venture out into restaurants you haven't been to before, or referrals from friends. You have to go to the restaurant, see if it makes sense. It's a long process, negotiate a deal for the menu with the owners. So it's just a bit of a pain. And what we did with Crowd Eats is we basically flipped the script. So as a group organizer, you just had to post an ad for your event on the platform, on Crowd Eats, saying, how many people, what type of event are you looking for, what area of the city, etc. And then you would have restaurants competing against one another to win your group reservation. So you'd get offers from, X number of restaurants, and then you and your group would be able to select the offering that you want most. So it was kind of a reverse model of what you would normally see. And I had this company. I ended up having it for about a year. It was, revenue generating from day one, which was really interesting. Thanks to the ESA network, it was really easy to start proving an MVP, a minimal viable product. And I thought the space was really interesting. I love the hospitality industry. Growing up in a hotel, I saw a lot of that. And for some reason, it really attracts me. I think it's a really fun, dynamic industry. So yeah, I did have some experience in the space before starting Bida, yeah.
Tell me about Bida.
So Bida started off as a drink a day subscription, just like the company I saw in the US. So what that means is you get one free drink every single day at any of our partner bars for €10 a month. And now we've moved over to a slightly different model. It's a free drink every 3 hours. And then
Every 3 hours.
yeah, I mean, the idea is, especially for Barcelona, is, people are going out several times a day for lunch, for dinner, after dinner for a cocktail, especially the tourists who are here visiting for a few days, So we wanted to make it more attractive for them, give them more value for their money. So we changed the model to a free drink every 3 hours at any of our, now we have almost 60 bars on our app. They're all 4-star and up bars, meaning they have at least a 4-star rating on TripAdvisor, Facebook reviews, Google reviews, etc. Quality is really important to us. And members simply purchase one of our drink passes. So we have 3-day, 7-day, 1 month passes for a very, very cheap price. So basically the 1 month pass is $14.99, which gives you a free drink every 3 hours for one entire month. So if you do the math, I mean, we have cocktails on our app that are €12. So if you go just once, you're pretty much almost paying off your monthly subscription. If you go twice, you're basically saving money, making profit.
So can you go to the same bar every night or?
You could technically, yeah. We don't have any restrictions at the moment because it just hasn't been a problem so far. If it is a problem, that's kind of like how we run our startup as well. Like we don't build things unless we see a need for it. And of course, need is very subjective as well. But we have a process in place, and we only build things when it's an absolute must. And so far that hasn't been an issue. We don't have people going back to the same venues. I think our target demographic, they tend to want to discover new places. They're not really people who go to the same places all the time, and that's kind of why they see value in our app, is they get to discover all these cool new hotspots in Barcelona that they may not have found otherwise.
That sounds fun. As a way to visit a city and to try new things. What does your average day look like?
So I'm definitely running around a lot. Yesterday I think I had 4 or 5 meetings all around the city. So a lot of the times I'm meeting with restaurant owners, potential investors. Now we're looking for an office space, so I'm looking at office spaces. Meeting with my team. I'm doing a lot of presentations. At this point, we're also raising fundraising. We're raising financing. So I'm starting to think about that. Really, like I have to speak with my investors in a few weeks. So we raised a small seed round around this time last year, maybe a bit later in the year. And now we're doing a follow-on round. So I have to start planning for that, putting together projections, putting together a budget, and then a plan for actually doing the follow-on financing. I mean, yeah, every day is so different. Now we have some new collaborators coming on board, so onboarding them is really one of my main focuses, making sure that they're up to speed with everything so that they can, run on their own and they don't need hand-holding. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. It's a bit insane.
You're a Canadian woman who runs a business in Spain. What are the challenges of a startup in Spain?
Yeah, so this has definitely been one of my biggest stresses, I would say, as a startup in Spain, coming from Canada, or myself coming from Canada. I think, like most people know, I don't think this is too much of a generalization, but North America is very efficient when it comes to a lot of things. So, Delaware companies are like the holy grail of starting companies. It's like a 10-minute thing, I've heard, legend says. But in Canada, I know from experience, it takes 2 or 3 hours to start a company, and it costs a few $100 Canadian. So I think it was like 300 Canadian when I last went, which is super cheap. It's like €200. And here, so the incorporation process is a minimum of 3,000, but because of all the bureaucracy and delays and issues and everything, we've probably spent over €10,000 just to incorporate the company and really get everything settled. even the financing we raised last August. And we only finally got the final paper signed about 2 weeks ago. I went to the notary, and in between August and 2 weeks ago, I went back to the notary at least 4 or 5 times to sign different documents because there were issues with, someone's last name or someone's NIE number, which is like their identification number, or clauses in our incorporation documents that were outdated, and it's stuff that's out of my control completely. It's either the lawyers or the notaries, or something was missing along the way somewhere. So it's quite frustrating, dealing with all that bureaucracy coming from such an efficient environment in North America. It's definitely frustrating. I've kicked walls at times. I have a scuff mark on the entrance of my flat here, and I leave it there as a reminder. It can be really easy to get frustrated, and at the same time, the reasons why this country is very difficult to start a company or do things in is the same reason why I actually moved here and why I love it so much. So the relaxed mentality of people here, they're so easygoing, they're so chill. I love so much, but it also causes these inefficiencies on the business side, unfortunately.
Do you think it's harder as a foreigner to get things done?
Yeah, naturally, my Spanish isn't perfect. I would say it's at like 80% fluency. So just naturally communicating with people is sometimes a struggle, especially if it's more technical jargon. If I go into a meeting with a notary or lawyer and they're talking very legal technical terms, yeah, it can be really challenging and frustrating, because obviously I want to understand 100% of what's going on, and I don't need anything to be even the least bit vague. So that's definitely frustrating, but then I also see benefits to it. I think a lot of people here in Spain see North Americans in a different light and kind of have more trust in us just because we are North American, have kind of different mentality. People here have really welcomed me, and I'm so grateful. From restaurant owners who, gave Bida a chance when we were first starting out, and when we had no restaurants on board at all, to get those first 15, it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Just coming from abroad, not knowing any of them prior. People were very supportive, and I think that's, the flip side of Barcelona is, everyone here is very open to working with you and trying new things. And if I want to meet anyone in the city, whether it's a restaurant owner or even Ferran Adrià, who I've met, or other very prominent people in the city, people are super open to chatting with you and giving you feedback, or helping you out with contacts or whatnot. So
that sounds fairly enriching as an overall experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Living in Spain, are you concerned about what's happening in Catalonia and how it'll affect your business?
Yeah, definitely. It's a concern that we have. Every time something happens here, it makes me a bit more nervous. Obviously, we want to move into other cities in Spain, including Madrid. And if we're a different country here in Catalonia, it makes things a lot more difficult. So it is something that makes me nervous. But at the same time, I have to move on with our day-to-day. I can't, lose focus. So, a part of me just says like, hey, this is completely out of your control right now, so don't worry about it. There's nothing I can do. So I just have to go on with our business, and whatever happens, happens, and we'll deal with it when that time comes.
What are the challenges of being a woman in tech?
So, I definitely think in some meetings or some places I go, there's a bit of a boys' club going on. But for the most part, I feel like I've almost been at an advantage here in Barcelona as a woman in tech. I've had so many female entrepreneurs or even male entrepreneurs reach out to me about speaking at different events. So women-focused events, but also just general events. But I think it's unique. It's unique to have a female in entrepreneurship, and because of that, I kind of have a leg up. So I think I've been blessed to be a female in entrepreneurship. I think it's sometimes shocking to people when I tell them what they do. They're like, really? And you work for this company? And I'm like, oh no, I'm the founder. And they're like, oh wow, they're like really impressed, and it feels good. But I'm happy that I'm also encouraging other women to do it, or inspiring other women to do it. I've had women reach out to me, just to tell me I'm doing great and the app is great and keep going and you're so inspiring, and I hope to be an entrepreneur myself one day. And it's really humbling, and I'm just so glad that people see it that way.
Do you see yourself as a serial entrepreneur or as someone who wants to shepherd a single idea to long-term implementation?
I definitely see myself more in the former light. So I just, the nature of my mind, I get bored very easily. I'm always thinking of new ideas. I always want to try new things and learn new things. So I think I'm more definitely on the side of serial entrepreneurship. I hope, I love Bida to death, and I want to grow it, for the next few years. This is absolutely my baby, and I want to see it take off. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about that next thing that I'll be doing. I'm always on the lookout for new ideas. And just in my personal day-to-day, I see so many of them. So yeah, definitely serial.
Well, what's your end game with Bida? What's a successful exit?
I think being acquired by a company like Airbnb or TripAdvisor or Time Out could be really interesting. These are companies who want to create a better experience for visitors to a city or even locals within a city. So a platform like Bida, an app like Bida, could definitely augment an experience in a city. It helps you, discover new places and have a much better time within a city. So yeah, that would be great. Obviously, we want to expand as well. So hopefully be in Madrid and Ibiza and maybe other cities outside of Spain eventually as well.
Do you see yourself being an entrepreneur for life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to picture myself going back to more corporate life or even working for someone else. I just love being my own boss, and I work really hard, but at the same time, if I need a day off, I will take a day off, and I love being able to make that decision. So I can go 10 days straight and then just be like, oh, I'm really tired today. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, So I like that freedom. But I also love just learning about so many different areas. So yeah, I don't see myself going back to corporate. It's really tough to envision.
You've talked to me in the past about the importance of legacy for you. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess as I get older, and I am getting older, the question of like what the purpose of life is, and I guess all these existential questions come up at times. And one of the things that always crosses my mind is, why are we doing what we're doing? What's our purpose? And for me, when it gets down to the core of why I am who I am or why I'm doing what I'm doing, it's really about legacy. So I think it's important that you're not forgotten after you pass away, move on to the next life, however you want to call it. I don't want people to just forget about me. I want people to talk about me in a positive light, obviously. Look back and say, hey, look what she did. This is amazing. We're so proud of her. Yeah, that's really important to me. I hope that my great grandkids talk about me. That's kind of the dream.
What do you want them to say?
Well, every generation in my family, I think, has kind of paved the way for the future generation's success. Obviously, like most families, most people around the world, I think. And I hope that my time here on Earth would have made the future generations' lives a lot easier, or just facilitated things along the way because of what I did.
Thanks for listening to Not That Original. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and feel free to share this podcast.